Hi guys, this is Karthik and Nourah from Caapid Simplified, and we are here to compensate for missing the webinar this morning because of an unexpected power outage here in Alton. This interview or this video has been shot after the tremendous response to our How to LLU interviews. A lot of people, and especially because it's the season of November and December, reached out to us to know how Californian schools approach students and select them in different interviews. We're talking about the schools starting from UCSF, UOP, LLU, USC, and of course, a little outside California, but also pretty much in the league, UNLV, Las Vegas. All of these schools have a couple of things in common, except of course USC, and they have very different expectations because they are on the West Coast, pretty far away from most of the schools which are clustered in the Midwest or in the East Coast. Because of the nature of these schools, there are specific nuances that Nourah experienced when she was applying to these schools and of course interviewed at them later. I'm going to ask a couple of questions in this webinar from Nourah and answer them alternatively between her and me. The first question is, what questions can we expect at various Californian schools? And eventually we'll go to listening to how to prepare for it.
Hey everyone, I'm here to answer your question about what kind of interview questions can you expect in Californian school interviews. So just like any other school, you'll expect a good amount of behavioral questions in the Californian schools, some ethical questions and some clinical based questions which can be in a written format, or it can also be something that you look at clinical pictures or something, because this time it's a virtual assessment. But I want to touch upon some of the specific questions that you can come across in Californian schools. One, they don't value clinical experience as much when compared to other schools. Now I'm excluding USC from this category because we all know that USC prefers candidates who've had a master's degree. So if you do have a master's degree, you can expect a question something like, why did you pursue a master's degree? Or questions like, why do you want to take a step down and pursue something like a DDS when you already have a master's degree and you could probably go into residency? And a couple of other questions about the school itself, like they might ask you, are you planning to move here? Where's your family? Just so they know that you have a base in West Coast. Apart from that, people who don't have a lot of clinical experience, you don't have to be too scared about these interviews, because I know that Californian schools like candidates who are fresh and they're not against them, so it's an advantage for us. Apart from that, they might ask you about your support system, also because it's very stressful, so they'll ask you how do you manage stress, what are the things you like to do in your pastime. They might ask you a couple of things about professionalism. It's a big thing with Californian schools, professionalism, integrity. Questions like this can also be asked. So this is just a gist, but we can go over some of the difficult questions and how we can answer them in the videos that come after this. Alright, so now we're going to have Karthik answer the next question for us, which is, what kind of changes can we expect in the healthcare system in the US with the change in the political system?
Most Californian schools prefer people who are pretty young. And how do you judge a person who is young? You would look at them for two aspects. One is their ability to learn really fast. And second is their ability to think critically, basically. So when you have a scenario, they want to know how you are able to form an opinion, how you are able to share your perspective, and of course, how you are able to defend that opinion. This is what they call critical thinking. So they pose a question that you cannot completely prepare for, like in the case, what changes do you expect based on the political situation in the US? So naturally, based on the knowledge you will have to form an opinion, you will have to share your perspective, and you will have to defend that opinion. Let's also broaden this question to something more than just the political scenario. What changes do you expect in general in healthcare and in dentistry as we shift from 2020 over to 2021 and beyond? I'm going to talk about a couple of changes that you can use in different ways in your interview. What's very important is that you stick to one theme and do not address your ideas on each and every theme. First, let's see the political situation. We have on one side the Democrats, and on the other side we have the Republicans. We all know that Republicans are tremendously fighting against Big Pharma, especially Trump has openly, vocally raised his voice against companies that are insulin manufacturers. So companies that are insulin manufacturers and whatever drugs they are producing or whatever equipment they are producing for the dental industry, their prices might tremendously go down. Now, this would really help, and this is our assumption, this would really help the large amounts of people, geriatric populations, who are on Medicare Advantage programs in the US and are accessing day-to-day medicine to manage their chronic conditions. This is one big change that will happen. On the other hand, we know Biden or the Democrats are big supporters of Big Pharma. Big Pharma will continue to raise their prices and medical equipment prices will continue to stay at this current level where they are. So your Dentsply Sirona products or your Select and CAD-CAM products from competing companies like a Brasseler or something would pretty much remain the same. In fact, they would continue to gain economies of scale and would have the opportunity to increase the price without any government intrusion. This is one significant difference in which will affect dentistry as you go forward. Prices will stay pretty much the same and can go higher if Democrats come to power, whereas if Republicans come to power, some product prices would definitely drop, and that drop, dentists may choose or may not choose to pass on to eventual end customers. Now, in all of this, we know patients do not pay for services. So who really benefits is patients who are not covered by health plans, who are not under an insurance, patients who are currently paying out of pocket, or patients who are currently in the Medicaid program might largely benefit. This is one change. Another thing, if we know, that is, if Republicans come to power, they wish to abolish what we call the Obamacare plan. The Obamacare plan provides accessible care, that is, affordable care to several Americans who have pre-existing conditions. So if your patient has something like a diabetes, like a hypertension or anything else, these pre-existing conditions, when they have to access dental care at your office, Obamacare would have covered for that. Now, Obamacare wouldn't if Trump wins. That means you will lose a sizable population of Medicaid patients, of low-income patients who are currently covered by these programs. Try to always share your opinion first and then defend your opinion to make a critical thinking question really work for you. Let's look at one more critical thinking question in the next 30 seconds. The question could be, how do you expect dentistry to change after COVID? The first thing you need to say is your opinion. I believe dentistry would make the ergonomics of a dentist far more important after COVID. You've stated your opinion. Next, what do? You defend your opinion. You go on to say, because of the additional use of personal protective equipment and the headgear and masks and so on, dentists will now carry a lot more weight on their heads, literally and figuratively. And therefore, their spines will be subjected to a lot more stress, and eventually that would make ergonomics a far more important aspect of everyday dental treatment. This is how you defend your opinion and make your critical thinking answer sound really well. The final thing that I said, and recall once more, is to be specific. Try to give only one opinion. Do not say COVID will change everything. It will make our appointments like telehealth. It will make our ergonomics different. It will make our pricing constraints much more important, and it will reduce the patient count because now we have logistical issues. Yes, while all of these might be true, it is difficult to grasp too many ideas at the same time. Instead, focus on one idea, be specific, and nail this interview. The next question to you, Nourah, is two things. First, if you are a fresh grad or you are a graduate without a master's program, the question is, why did you not pursue a master's degree? And the opposite question is, why did you pursue a master's degree?
So I'm here to answer a question that a lot of fresh graduates, also people with less experience and without a master's degree, are asked, which is, why did you not pursue a master's degree? That question could be aimed at, why did you not pursue a master's degree in your home country? Or it could also be asked as, why didn't you opt for a residency when you came to do DDS, which is the same degree that you pursued in your home country? So there are a couple of ways you can answer this question. But first, try to sit and list out the reasons why you want to pursue a DDS as opposed to a residency. A couple of reasons can be, one is you are still not confident in your clinical skills to go out in the world and establish your own practice and do real life dentistry. Two, it could be that you want to go through dental education in the American dental system because it is the best in the world, and you want to learn from the faculty who have learned that kind of dentistry and transfer those values to you before you move on to your private practice or wherever you want to work. Three, it could be that you still haven't figured out what you're interested in. Like, you might be interested in ortho, you might be interested in prosto, you might be a person like me who's shuffling between, do I want to do a residency or do I want to be a general practitioner with multiple fellowships so I can do a little bit of everything. So DDS can be a path where you're going through the same stuff over again so you can kind of get a direction of where you're headed in the future. That'll be some of the reasons that you can. And you have to remember that when you're answering this question, please try not to downgrade your past dental school education. That's the last thing that you want to do. When you talk about your dental education, talk about it proudly and talk about the amount of clinical experience and the confidence that you got. And the way you put it forward should be something like you're reinforcing your basics. You're not saying that I don't know my basics, I want to learn again, because they're not here to teach you from ground up. They're here to reinforce what you already know and to tell you how things can be done better or what are the other ways in which things can be done. And also, an advantage for some of the fresh graduates is to tell how it's easy for you to relearn or learn some of the things that they're going to teach you than to break habits. And that's something that I've seen sticks on to the interviewers, and they align with that because everybody knows that it's difficult to break habits. All right. So for the second question as to why don't you just go ahead and pursue a residency, or why are you coming to a DDS, is you could point out location. So when you do a residency instead of a DDS, you are limited in the number of states you can practice and to the power as to like what you can practice. So that might be a reason that you can point out and say that I don't want to be restricted with that. Or you can also point out family. For example, if your family lives in a state where you cannot practice, if you just do a residency, that can be something that you can point out to. Let's go on to the next question now. So you have a master's degree. Why do you want to go through DDS? So for these students, you really have to think about what are the alignments. Like, are you going to start teaching after you finish your DDS? Or are you going to move into a completely different field in dentistry after you finish DDS? That's something that people in the US do a lot. You can see neurosurgeons who have worked all their life to become a neurosurgeon, and then they suddenly quit their job because they're not happy with it, like maybe when they're 45 or 50 years old, and they move into business. So it's a very common thing that happens here. So don't feel like you can't say that, or don't feel like people will think that, oh, you're not staying with one thing that you started. So if you are a periodontist and you want to become a general dentist, you most certainly can. And you can talk about how, yes, I went through a residency, I became a periodontist, but I'm more interested in general dentistry, or you could say I'm interested in implantology and I want to be focusing on that. So to do that, I know that in the US, I have to go through a DDS program. That might be something you can say. And as I said for the previous answer, you can use one of the other points too, where you're reinforcing your basics before you practice in a whole different country. And I think a bonus or a cookie that I can add to this answer is about learning about the community that you're going to be working with. So jumping into a residency is like you're just thrown into the water with sharks in them. You don't know what the sharks eat, you don't know what their habits are when they come into the water, you don't know that. So you can talk about how this is an opportunity. These 2 years are an opportunity for me to learn about the lifestyle and the community that I'll be working with, and understand their needs, their expectations, because you can talk about how it contrasts from your home country. And that will be something that aligns with them too. So these are a couple of ways you can answer this question. Please email us if you have any doubts about this question.